look at the cost savings or the impact on customers and take 10% or more. If you've got a good brand name, you can charge 15. If you don't, you can charge 10. But you certainly need to be, at the end of the day, if you're solving a problem that people don't have, 10% of nothing is still nothing.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
It's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the problematic relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving. Today our guest is Steve Johnson. Here are 3 things you want to know about Steve before we start. He is the first hired instructor at Pragmatic Marketing, the company I recently left, and it's an amazing company. He is the CEO and co-founder of Under10 Consulting, which I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about. And he is possibly the most brilliant thought leader in product management today. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
I said possibly.
A little over the top.
I said possibly, okay?
Well, that's what I tell my kids.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm one of the top minds in product management, and they go, "What's product management?"
Well, speaking of which, I was scrolling through your LinkedIn profile, and your first product management title was 30 years ago.
And yet I haven't aged a moment.
I know, you still look that young.
Indeed.
So what was that like 30 years ago?
Well, that's an interesting way to get into this topic. 30 years ago, product management was a business role. The folks who were doing product management were business people and making business decisions. But career-wise, coming up was kind of interesting. My first job out of college, I was a programmer in Fort Worth, Texas. And my boss did this super kind thing. He recommended me to a friend who was hiring sales engineers at a different company. And so I got this job as a sales engineer, and I did great. I really loved that work. And then I moved into sales from there, and was suddenly outselling everybody on this one product that I had used as a user. And my boss said, I don't know what you're doing, but could you teach everybody else what you're doing? And so I put together a sales playbook and ran that across in our office and then across all the offices, and came to the attention of the VP of marketing, who said, hey, what you're doing is actually called product management. And actually, today what we would call it is product marketing. But anyway, he recruited me into that role as the product manager, whatever that is.
Yes, well, that's the real question, right? Whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And eventually I want to I know where I want our conversation to lead to, but let's start off with the roles of product managers and product marketing managers in today's world. My view was always product managers, their most important job is to figure out what the next version of the product is going to look like.
Okay.
If I could say that's what the single most important thing a product manager does. First off, is that right, wrong?
I agree with that. I'll take it a little bit further in a moment, but finish your thought.
Well, so as I watch subscriptions, I see more and more of that decision moving to product marketing. And that's what I find interesting about this whole process. And I wanted to debate it for just a few minutes.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go back to kind of where I started. When I started, again, it was pretty much a business role, and it was almost always in marketing, but it wasn't doing marketing communications. And then while I was a product manager, it started becoming, the product manager role started becoming more and more technical, more into the details of what's coming out in the next release. And then when I, was teaching at Pragmatic Marketing, I remember I had this wonderful experience where one of the people in my class was the president of a company I had worked for. And I said, so, I was making your point, that the product managers are really about what should we build next? And product marketing is about taking the products we have now and increasing their success in the marketplace. And that's how I think of it today, that product management is about what problems are we going to solve using, a development resource, right, that will get features. Whereas product marketing is looking at, okay, we've got this product. What problems do we have? What friction exists? And how can we remove that? And so these are a different kind of problems. These are go-to-market problems. So I think of product management as next, and I think of product marketing as the product we have now. And then I typically see like the VP of product management or a portfolio manager looking at what products and options we should have in the future beyond the current product set. So I think of it in the three horizons, now, next, and future, if that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. And so to differentiate next from future for a second, you would think of next more as, how do I tweak my current product? What are the new capabilities I would put on my current product? Right. Where future is, what are the new products that we don't do today?
That's how I think of it. Okay. So that, and then, Agile happened. And it was interesting when I started Under10 Consulting back in 2012, and I should do a quick aside there. After 15 years at Pragmatic, I continued seeing people who needed help operationalizing what they'd learned. Great class, love the stories, love the jokes. I'm really having a hard time figuring out how to apply the concepts from class to my products in my organization. So I started Under10 Consulting, and the idea of Under10 was, don't try to do all 37 boxes. Identify the 10 or fewer that are most important. So that was the origin of the company name. But anyway, well, now I derailed myself. That aside became, made me forget where I was going.
The key point. Well, we were talking about.
Oh, I know what it was. Okay. So.
Oh, say hi to him. What's his name?
Well, I'm sure we'll be able to edit that out, won't we?
Yeah, maybe.
Or leave it in, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So I remember where I was going. When I started Under10 Consulting, the first thing I did was I called and interviewed over 100 VPs of product and CPOs. In particular, wanting to look at, how is product management changing, and how has Agile impacted product management? And pretty much everybody I talked to said that product managers have become primarily technicians as a result of Agile, which is not what Scrum asked for. I mean, in the Scrum book, it said the product owner is, well, if you read the book, it feels to me like the product owner is truly another name for product manager as you and I understand it. But in practice, it seems that the product managers have become designers. They're doing prototypes. They're assigning tasks in some cases. They're doing development. And to the point I think you made 4 or 5 minutes ago, and product marketing has said, well, somebody's got to do this stuff. And they have stepped into the void that has been left. So the companies that I talked to that said, I love Agile, Agile is doing everything great for us, they split the role into product manager and product owner. That there is a product owner dedicated to 1 or 2 or 3 teams, and they focus on what's in the next release or what's in the next sprint. But a business person is the product manager. And the companies that said, Agile has been a mess for us, are the ones that said, well, we just renamed all of our product managers product owners. And they got so subsumed into the development side of the house, they haven't left the building in 3 years. Right. And one of the things that Agile even mandates is they want the product owner, I should have said Scrum, but what they mandate is they want the product owner to be a customer representative, and yet don't ever leave the building because, we need you to answer our questions or read aloud to us from Jira.
And so the problem gets solved by product marketing taking on this role of saying, oh, here's what we're going to go build next.
Exactly.
So
And
the other,
you know, it's more like I can't actually do my go-to-market job if I don't have clarity on the buyer personas and the markets that we're trying to serve and the size of the market and the positioning and a whole bunch of stuff that you would expect a product manager to have done, but you would not expect a developer lead to have done.
right. And while the product marketer's out learning all about the different personas and the different uses and the value that we're going to add to the marketplace, they're finding all these problems that we're not solving
Exactly.
and theoretically bringing them back into the company. So,
Mhm.
so it does get left to product marketing's role. Hmm.
Indeed. And I was at a conference recently, sitting at a table, and it was a product marketing conference, and I was sitting at a table with a couple of product marketing people and a couple of product managers. And at some point, the product manager leaned over to me and said, they keep saying product marketing, but they're describing what I thought my job is. And the issue was this guy's been doing it for a while. So he's the product manager you and I were talking about, you know, the one who researches the market and understands the problems and identifies not just features, but new products and options to offer. And another quick anecdote, my friend Luke Homan, who is the founder of Innovation Games, used to put it pretty simply. He'd say a product manager owns pricing. A product owner doesn't. I'm not sure you would agree with that statement, but certainly we would agree that product owners rarely own pricing.
Yeah, I would say that that's way closer to true than not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's very far over. So there's a lady who helps me with some of my content, a subject matter expert I often go to, Natalie Louie. And she was product marketing for Oracle and Hired, and now she's at Zora. I mean, she's super brilliant product marketing person. And when I think of the role she does a lot of product management stuff.
Right.
And it is just fascinating to me that role is so important that it's gotten moved over. Okay, so I appreciate that conversation because it kind of clarifies some things in my mind, but I don't really care. Here's what I really care about is somebody is saying, here's what we have to go build next.
Mm-hmm.
For the sake of argument, let's call it product managers, but it doesn't matter who it is. And since we think in terms of product managers, we'll let them have that role now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now someone's got to figure out what the next thing is we build, and I'm a pricing guy. When I think about what we taught at Pragmatic, it was what problems are we going to go solve? When I take that same thought process or concept and I turn it into a pricing world, I think about what's the value of the next feature or capability or now, are product managers thinking this way? Are they thinking about value? Are they thinking just about the problems? Help me out. Help me understand the mind of the product manager.
I think that's, you're touching on the big issue. If product managers, are primarily spending their time with development, then they don't know where the value is. If product managers are saying, we're building this feature because I talked to a sales guy, or our competitor just came out with this feature and they're just doing the copycat, well, they don't know where the value is either. And to me, this is all quite sad. I mean, I'm not saying, oh, yay, look what's happened, right? It feels to me as, I'm sorry, I'm pretty active on Quora and I'm pretty active on Reddit. And I'm astounded at some of the things that I see in terms of questions. Like one person posted recently, when will UX and PM be merged? And went on to say, my job in product management is to build prototypes and to articulate acceptance criteria and make sure the right developers are getting the right tasks, delineating between front end versus back end. And I'm like, I know what you're doing is important, but it's not product management. You're being a development lead. And I think I don't know if it started with Agile or if it started with the importance of UX. And what I saw, 20 years ago was product managers moving into the UX space because developers wouldn't. And my line then and now was, the reason product managers do UX design is because they suck at it less than developers do.
God, I enjoy talking to you, Steve. Okay.
But
I want to get
seriously,
this.
to your point, if you haven't spent time with customers or even, non-customers, people who ought to be shopping for your product and are not, how in the world are you making pricing decisions or even, market sizing decisions? I talked to a guy is not a statistically relevant survey.
Our competitor did this. Ooh, good. Nice.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to, and I don't care if it's product management or product marketing, somebody theoretically is hearing things from the marketplace, but who's saying how valuable is this? And I guess I could drop this back to, are we actually writing business cases that have anything like reality in them?
Or, are we even writing business cases? I was working with one company. The product manager was hired because the president had this great idea, and she got well into the development side of it and started doing, market validation, because she had learned that that was something that product managers were supposed to do, which is true. And she was showing the idea to a couple of potential customers, and they were just bored senseless. They couldn't care less. And it kept happening and kept happening, and she got more and more concerned. And finally she went back to the president and said, "Where did this idea come from?" And he said, "Oh, it was just kind of an idea that I had one day." So she realized there was no due diligence done on the idea at all. And she needed to go all the way back to the beginning. What persona do we have, and what problem do we solve? And is that problem urgent to the buyer and important to the user? And what she found was they were building a solution to a problem people didn't have.
Yep. So I had the exact opposite thing happen to me, which I want to give huge kudos. I was in teaching a client, and one of the ladies said to me, "I got hired to do this new project the CEO wanted." He said, "Here's a $5 million budget, go do this." And she said, "I don't want the $5 million. I want to go validate the problem first." It's like, nice job.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah. Nice job. So how do you teach people how to value a feature? And I keep using the word value because it's an important word in my world. And maybe you don't use that word, or it's not important to you, but how do you teach people how to value the next feature they're going to build?
Well, I think you explained this really well in the price class, where you look at different combinations of things and use conjoint analysis. But I feel I mean this in a nice way. I feel that that's almost beyond what most companies can do.
Absolutely.
And one of the ideas that I have underneath my consulting business is, let's do some easy things quickly. And some easy things are, your designer builds a user interface, and you go show it to 3 people, or set up a Zoom session and walk them through, a PowerPoint demo. That's something people can do. And for that matter, let me go differently. I taught a class in California, and there was a guy in the front row who had his arms crossed for like 2 days. And finally at the end, he said, "I can't do any of this." And I went, "What do you mean you can't do any of this?" And he's like, "I've got to have permission from my boss before I can leave the building."
I hate that. Oh.
And I said, "But wait, I've been giving you techniques that you can use without permission. I mean, nobody prevents you from hopping on the phone with a customer who recently called customer support and say, 'Dude, I've got this thing I want to show you.'" Or I used to be friends with the CIO of JP Morgan Chase. And I would secretly call him without my salespeople knowing and say, "Hey, I'm really struggling with this security issue. I don't understand the use scenario." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's really common. What you want to do is this, 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 this." And I knew he wouldn't rat me out. He would never say, "Oh yeah, I had a fine talk the other day with your product manager who made all these promises on your behalf." I've always so I think there are a number of techniques which I do teach, and when I talk about customer and market discovery, it's build a landing page and get some signups, build a prototype and show it to some people. Do a survey if those are any good anymore. And I'm more and more feeling that the sales operations and marketing have so ruined surveys by asking me how every flight was and how every bite of my meal was, that we all have survey fatigue. So we need to look for some other techniques to do validation. But what I'm really is a long ramble to get there, I'm sorry, is I don't see people trying to get down to the feature level as much as just saying, here's a bunch of stuff we're working on. Explain to me how it would be, how you would use it. But there's an implication of, how valuable is this for us to build? And when you hear 4 or 5 or 6 people say, that doesn't interest me at all, then I don't need to really score that. It's to me, for me, I'm mostly looking for 0 or 1, yay or nay, not so much this combination of things would be worth $792 and this combination of things would be worth $648.
Yeah, I tend not to worry so much about what's the dollar value I would put on it, and I worry much more about, is there value, or what would the value of the solution be? I loved my time at Pragmatic because I learned so much while I was teaching. It was incredible. But one of the things that I did, I internalized this concept of the problem, right? The problem is really important, but the problem is just the first step, because you've got the problem, then you've got the solution, which is your feature. Then you've got the result the client's expecting to get when they solve this problem. And then you've got, especially in the B2B world, what's the dollar value of that result? And so to me, that's what I care a lot about, is can I get to that dollar value of the result from my clients? That's tough to do in B2C and selling fashion or something, but in B2B, it's certainly reasonable and feasible.
I agree. And I was posting on Quora recently, and somebody asked a question of, how much do you charge? And the scenario they gave was something like, clients can eliminate 2 $100,000 positions by implementing whatever it is this person was talking about. And I instantly went to, well, what is 15% of that?
Yep.
And that's probably your idea, right? 15% of the net gain?
You might have learned that from the price class.
Yeah, I might have. That sounds good.
I usually use 10% as the starting point. And then if you have a really good brand, you can have 15%. But
I agree with that statement as well. But here's to me. Here she's got a clear understanding of the benefit in tangible ways, as opposed to people will feel better, right? I mean, it's like you can eliminate these positions, or you can increase revenues, or you can reduce costs, and you can participate in that. And yet it seems to me many in a product planning or a product owner role are, here's another story that I put in my book. I was in the San Francisco airport. So you got to figure out everybody there is in, a Silicon Valley person.
Yep.
And I was watching this guy, and he was literally using cards, which I strongly advocate, and I didn't think anybody ever did. But he had a bunch of cards, and he was flipping through them. And I leaned over and I said, "Are you prioritizing your backlog?" And he said, "Oh gosh, how did you know?" And I'm like, who here is not a software guy in this airport, right? And I said, how are you prioritizing? And he's like, well, I just feel like this one's more important than that one. I mean, he had this aligns better with strategy. This will translate to revenue. This is more cost savings for our customers. He didn't really have a prioritization scheme. And that's certainly what I've been trying to do in the work I do here at Under 10, is help people get clarity on roles. And as you said, I don't care what you call it. Right now, I'm kind of enamored with 3 brand new titles that I made up: product strategy, product planning, product growth. Because other people have got all this baggage with product manager or product owner or product marketing manager. But I like those three titles because it aligns directly to what I'm wanting them to do,
Yep.
which is come up with a strategy for future products, or come up with a plan for what we're going to do next, or look for ways to grow the products we have now. And
Yeah.
all of my work is really around pretty simple metaphors like, all right, now that you have those three roles or one role, right, let's write down everything you expect those people to do, and I'll show you how to decide whether those things are product things, development things, or sales things.
And then we'll get it divvied up. Oh,
Yeah.
Steve, I am going to have to run. This is so good, though. One last question for you. What's one piece of pricing advice that you would give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
Well, you should have told me you were going to ask me that at the beginning, because I gave it away in the middle. I mean, it was, yeah, my pricing advice is, look at the cost savings or the impact on customers and take 10% or more. You can, and as you said in our discussion earlier, if you've got a good brand name, you can charge 15. If you don't, you can charge 10.
Yeah.
But you certainly need to be, at the end of the day, if you're solving a problem that people don't have, 10% of nothing is still nothing.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right. Steve, thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Lots of good information on my website, under10consulting.com, including ways to get in touch with me.
And we'll have that in the show notes as well, but that's Under10 Consulting, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Under10consulting.com. And I'm also on Twitter and all sorts of other places as sjohnson717, which is my birthday.
Yeah, and if you listen to anything product management, you can't get away from him. So,
I love talking about product and product management.
And you do it so well too. So that's great. Episode 59, all done. My favorite part. Let's see. I enjoyed talking about the way product management is becoming product marketing, or vice versa, however you want to look at that. So what was your favorite part? Please let us know in the comments or wherever you downloaded and listened. And while you're at it, would you please leave us a 5-star review? We take these very seriously, and they're hugely helpful to us. Don't forget, we've got a community at championsofvalue.com, which is absolutely free to you. And we also announced a new program, insiders.championsofvalue.com, where you can subscribe to all of our courses. And if you use the tag or the promo code INSIDER now, you can have the first month for $5. Talk about absolutely cheap. And by the way, I don't care if you sign up and then quit in a month. Just sign up, go try it out. It's my job to make sure you get enough value that you stick around. So that's all we got for today. If you have any questions or comments about the podcast or about pricing, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact